Okay. Believe in Yahweh for the impossible. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 29, by faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians, essaying to do, were drowned. Some of the most popular shows on TV are what we call reality-based programs, including a series called World's Most Amazing Videos. We like those shows because we are able to see people do things and survive incidents that look impossible. For some of us, being told that something is impossible is simply a challenge. For others, hearing that's impossible is a reason to stop trying, to quit. Years ago, when the electric light bulb was a relatively new invention, the glass bulb was clear and the light produced a glaring and direct light. The desirability of frosting the bulb was recognized by the GE engineers. But nobody thought it was possible. In fact, as a joke, young engineers were assigned the task of creating a process to frost the bulbs to reduce the glare. But one young engineer didn't get the joke. Marvin Pipkins thought of a way to use an etching acid on the inside of the glass and did the impossible. He created the frosted light bulb we use in our homes today. Henry Ford was an automotive genius. He came up with great ideas and handed them to researchers for development. One of his ideas was a concept of an engine in which the pistons were set at an angle to each other rather than in a straight line. He sketched out his idea for the V8 motor and took it to his engineers, and after he left, they looked it over and shook their heads for the boss ignorance of basic engineering. Somebody volunteered to tell that his idea was impossible. Ford says, do it anyways and stay at it until you succeed. It took over a year and many designs, but eventually Ford's researchers came up with the design of the most powerful automobile engine known to us today. His refusal to acknowledge the impossible laid the foundation for turning an idea into a working design. In this message from Hebrews 11, we have met great people of faith who overcame impossibilities. Their stories are captured for us, not on the world's most amazing videos, but in the Bible's most amazing stories. As you read them and hear sermons preached about this great exploits, one response may be indifference. So what? Or you might say, wouldn't it be cool if those kinds of things happened today? Or you could believe that these stories have something to say to you. For they do. The Bible is Yahweh's way of saying to you and me, this is who I am and what I do. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 11 tells us, now all these things happen unto them for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. And John 20 verse 31 tells us the same truth. But these are written that you might believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of Yahweh, and that believing you might have life through his name. We go once again to Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11 verse 29. By faith they have passed through the Red Sea, and by dry land, which the Egyptians are saying to do, they were drowned. We are reference to a fantastically amazing account of the power of Yahweh in the Old Testament. The history of people of Yahweh. As we ponder about this story, the question I want you to keep asking yourself is this. Are there impossible circumstances in my life Yahweh is allowing for his own purpose? Will I trust him with my fate, with my destiny, The whole story of the crossing of the Red Sea is told in Exodus 14. A little background to set the scene. Because of the famine in Canaan, now the country of Israel, Jacob's small clan, moved to Egypt, settling there under the protection of their son and brother Joseph, who Yahweh has raised to the position of prime minister. In the course of 400 years, the small clan of less than 100 had become about 1 million souls, give or take a few. The Egyptians, fearing this growing nation inside their borders, had reduced them to slavery by preventing them access to power and prosperity. The Jews prayed for deliverance, and Yahweh sent them Moses. After some extensive training in faith, Moses confronted the Pharaoh, the supreme ruler of Egypt, and with Yahweh's backing, won the freedom of this nation of slaves. So let's pick up the story in Exodus chapter 13, verse 17. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that Yahweh led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For Yahweh said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war, and they return to Egypt. But Yahweh led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. Verse 14, verse 1, and Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal-zephon. Before it shall you encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, and the wilderness has shut them in. The first fact to note on this account is this. Yahweh set up his people in an impossible situation so all of the world could see and know his power. Given our high opinion of ourselves, our first response is probably something like, how unfair of him. Who does he think he is, God? Yes, he does. As shocking as it is to us, he reserves the right as Elohim to use us for his own purpose. And to the extent that we learn to cooperate with him, he is honored and we can be blessed even in times of great trouble. See, Yahweh knew exactly what he was doing. Not even Moses had a clue. Yahweh just said, trust me. Don't you love that phrase? I hate it. I don't like trusting anybody, especially when their actions and plans seem stupid. And it certainly looked like Yahweh was confused as he led 1 million people in a big circle and then had them set up their camp right next to the Red Sea. What would they do if Pharaoh changed his mind and came after them? He was famous for changing his mind. He had let them go and then decided to keep them in slavery several times over the past year. Wouldn't it make more sense to put them in a place where they could form a defensive perimeter to fight off the army of Egypt? Sure it would. But Yahweh had a different plan that would let Israel and the Egyptians see his power. About 1,500 years later in Jewish history, there was a less momentous occasion of the ministry of Yeshua that teaches us the same principle. Yeshua and some of his friends came upon a blind man sitting along the road. Those walking with Yeshua formed a judgment immediately. Their thinking is revealed in the question they ask. In John chapter 9, verse 2, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Yeshua answered, it is astonishing. In John 9, verse 3, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the work of Yahweh might be displayed in his life. Then Yeshua went to the blind man and healed him in a most unconventional way. He spit on the ground, made a little mud, and smeared it on the man's eyes. Then he told the blind man to take a step of faith. John 9, verse 7, go wash in the pool Siloam. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. This happened so that the work of Yahweh might be displayed. That impossibility in your life happened with the full knowledge of Yahweh. Nothing surprises him. Might it also have happened with the cooperation of Yahweh so that you and your circle of influence might see his power revealed? Could be. Ask yourself that question. Are there impossible circumstances in my life that Yahweh wants us to use to bring himself honor? Let's go on with the story. So Yahweh led these people to the edge of the Red Sea, and they encamped there. The Bible says that when it sunk into the minds of the Egyptian leaders that their labor force was gone, they went berserk and sent the army after their former slaves. Pharaoh's army was one of the best in that time. When the Israelites saw the dust that the chariots were rising in the distance, I'd like to tell you that after all the miracles that they have seen over the previous year, they stayed calm in the hope that Yahweh would once again come to their rescue. Sorry, think again. Here's what the Bible says. In Exodus 14, verse 10, and when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto Yahweh, and they said unto Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. There's just one word: terror. These people who had been through so much for more than a year now feared for their lives and for what the future held for them back in Egypt. Compared to the tomorrow that filled their imagination, yesterday's difficulties seemed desirable. In fact, they attacked Moses for leading them out of slavery. Their sarcasm must have cut his heart to ribbons. Were there no graves in Egypt that you had to drag us out here to die? And please note this: their fear erased any sense of Yahweh's presence with them, despite the visible reminders during the day. Yahweh led them by a pillar of a cloud. At night, he led them by a pillar of fire. This was going on when all this was going on. Is it any wonder that Yahweh shows up in people's lives? One of the first things he often says is, fear not. While we are in the grip of our fearful imaginations, faith is gone. Good judgment flies away. Relationships get wrecked. Awful words are yelled. Curses are hurled at heaven. You know what I'm talking about. I'm sure that you, like me, have felt the choking grip of fear. What is shaking you? Does the future of your family bring you fear? Afraid you're going broke in your business? Does some sin threaten to bring you spiritual ruin, causing you terror? This ancient story of Yahweh's intervention is instructive for us. So let's go on in Exodus 14, verse 13. And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of Yahweh, which he will show you today. For the Egyptians who you have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever. Yahweh shall fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. Moses didn't attempt to defend himself. He didn't argue for better strategies. He pointed the fearful people to the one who could and would save them. He gave them 4 important words. Don't be afraid. Stand firm. See Yahweh's deliverance as he fights for you. Be still. We could summarize that all with a modern phrase, get a grip. The Chicken Little response to life's crisis is all too common, all too natural. You remember the story, don't you? The stupid chicken saw something fall and provoked a barnyard panic by running around yelling, "The sky is falling." Nothing comes of panic. In every pressure situation, the wisest choice is to take emotions under control, assess the difficulties and resources, and develop a plan. For believers, their greatest resource is knowing that Yahweh is fighting for us. Before we rush out to do whatever we think needs to be done in the moment, be still. The psalmist tells us in Psalm 46, verse 7, Yahweh of hosts is with us. The Elohim of Jacob is our refuge. Shelah. Come before the works of Yahweh, what desolations he has made in the earth. He makes his war to cease unto the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in sunder. He burns the chariot in the fire. Be still and know that I am Elohim. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Yahweh of hosts is with us. The Elohim of Jacob is our refuge. Shelah. Elohim is with you. Be still. That's an interesting Hebrew word. Rapha. It is translated in a variety of ways. Feeble, fail, weaken, idle, stay, slack, faint. What does it mean? To let drop, abandon, relax, refrain, forsake. Chill. Know that I am Elohim. Back to our key question. Are there impossible circumstances in my life Yahweh is allowing for his own purpose? Will I trust him with my fate? Will I trust him with my destiny? Exodus 14, verse 19, and the angel of Elohim, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it became between the camp and the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to those, so that the one came not near the other all night. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahweh caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. The children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on the left. The Egyptians pursued and went in after them in the midst of the sea, even as all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch, Yahweh looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, that they drove them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for Yahweh fights for them against the Egyptians." Yahweh said unto Moses, "Stretch out thy hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, upon their horsemen." And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it. Yahweh overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea, and the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry ground in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. Thus Yahweh saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw the great work which Yahweh did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared Yahweh and believed Yahweh and his servant Moses. How did this miracle occur? Our text sets the baseline. Hebrews 11, verse 29. By faith the people passed through the Red Sea on dry land. But when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. Faith had to be operational. Sure, Yahweh had a plan and a man who urged the people to trust him, but ultimately the choice belonged to the people who had to exercise their faith. They had to choose, and they chose to see the Lord's plan unfold. Would you please note the final outcome? In verse 31, Israel saw the great work which Yahweh did upon the Egyptians. The people feared Yahweh. They believed Yahweh and his servant Moses. One more time I pose those key questions to you. Are there impossible circumstances in my life Yahweh is allowing for his own purpose? Will I trust him with my faith? Will I trust him with my destiny? Predicaments, we all face them. They are uncomfortable, nerve-wracking, and often threaten to drive us into despair. Predicaments range from personal to global. Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis in the early 60s when the world teetered on the edge of nuclear war? These tight places abound in history. The Bible record is brimming with stories of people in crisis. Eve's moment was with the decision there in the Garden of Eden, so she was tempted by the serpent. She failed, choosing to ignore Yahweh's deliverance. Yeshua's moment of choice was at Gethsemane when he was faced with death on the stake to bear the sins of the world. He took the faith road and brought us salvation. Peter stood in a courtyard full of terror as his friend and Lord stood trial. He was pressed by several people about his relationship with Yeshua. He failed to act in faith and disgraced himself in the night. But Yeshua loved him and eventually restored him. But what pain his faithlessness caused. What about you? What is squeezing you today? What moment of decision do you face? Is your back against a wall with no apparent way out? Choose faith. Moses' words to a terrorized people are a true word for you today. Don't be afraid. Stand firm. See Yahweh's deliverance as he fights for you. Be still. Know that he is Elohim. Yahweh bless.